The sharp crack of combat boots against polished concrete echoed through Naval Air Station Meridian like a battle drum. But the woman mopping the floors in faded maintenance coveralls didn't even look up. What the cocky instructor strutting past her didn't realize was that they were about to witness the most devastating reality check in military history. Because the janitor they were about to humiliate wasn't just some random civilian contractor. She was someone whose classified service record would make their own accomplishments look like participation trophies. And when her true identity finally surfaced, it would leave an entire military installation speechless and rewrite everything they thought they knew about respect, courage, and what a real warrior actually looks like. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. The morning sun blazed over the sprawling complex of Naval Air Station Meridian, casting long shadows across the training facilities that had forged some of America's most elite warriors for the past 4 decades. The base hummed with its usual rhythm of controlled chaos, the distant roar of fighter jets conducting touch-and-go landings, the synchronized chanting of recruits running morning PT, and the metallic clanging of weights in the physical training facilities where future SEALs pushed their bodies beyond normal human limits. Building 47, officially designated as the Advanced Combat Training Center, stood like a fortress of steel and concrete at the heart of the installation. Its windowless walls had witnessed countless transformations, ordinary men and women entering as hopeful candidates and emerging as hardened special operations warriors, if they emerged at all. The facility's reputation was legendary throughout the military community. Stories circulated about instructors so demanding that they could break candidates with a single withering glance. About training scenarios so realistic that some participants required counseling afterward. And about standards so high that a 90% failure rate was considered merciful. Inside the ACTC, the hierarchy was as rigid as the building's concrete foundation. At the apex stood the instructor cadre, battle-tested veterans who wore their combat experience like armor and their arrogance like a badge of honor. These were men who had earned their positions through blood, sweat, and documented heroism in places most civilians couldn't pronounce. They commanded absolute respect from trainees, deference from support staff, and acknowledgement from their peers that they represented the pinnacle of military excellence. Master Instructor Vance Blackwood ruled this domain with an iron fist wrapped in a velvet glove of bureaucratic protocol. A 22-year veteran with deployments spanning 3 continents and 2 major conflicts, Blackwood had transformed the ACTC into what many considered the most challenging training environment in the entire Navy. His philosophy was simple: better to break candidates in training than to lose operators in combat. His methods were legendary for their effectiveness and notorious for their brutality. Beneath Blackwood operated a carefully selected team of senior instructors, each hand-picked for their unique ability to identify weakness and eliminate it through relentless pressure. Chief Petty Officer Marcus Kane specialized in psychological warfare, using verbal intimidation to strip away candidates' mental defenses until only their core character remained. Petty Officer First Class Deanna Torres brought expertise in close-quarters combat, teaching lethal techniques with a precision that bordered on artistry. Senior Chief Miguel Santos handled weapons training with a perfectionism that made Swiss watchmakers look careless by comparison. Supporting this elite cadre was a network of junior instructors, administrative personnel, medical staff, and maintenance workers who kept the complex machinery of military training functioning smoothly. Each person understood their role in the hierarchy, their level of access to information, and their expected degree of deference to those above them in the chain of command. The system worked because everyone knew their place and stayed in it. The trainees themselves occupied the bottom tier of this carefully structured ecosystem. These were already accomplished military personnel, Marines who had survived Paris Island, sailors who had proven themselves in fleet operations, soldiers who had demonstrated exceptional performance in their initial specialties. But here, at the SCTC, their previous achievements meant nothing. Here, they were numbers on a roster, potential operators who had to prove themselves worthy of joining America's most elite fighting force. The attrition rate was merciless, the standards unforgiving, and the instructors seemingly immune to sympathy or sentiment into this testosterone-fueled environment of military precision and masculine dominance. Came the support staff, the invisible workforce, that kept the facility operational while the real warriors focused on their training mission. Food service workers who arrived before dawn to prepare meals that would fuel 18-hour training days. Medical personnel who patched up injuries that would sideline professional athletes for months. Communications technicians who maintained the secure networks that connected this isolated facility to command structures worldwide. And maintenance workers who cleaned, repaired, and organized the endless equipment required to simulate combat scenarios, preparing and narrating. This story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Among these support personnel, maintenance staff occupied perhaps the lowest rung on the social ladder. They were typically civilian contractors or military personnel on light duty, responsible for the unglamorous but essential work of keeping the facility clean, functional, and ready for the next wave of candidates. They moved through the building like ghosts, present but unnoticed, necessary but unacknowledged, performing work that everyone depended on but no one wanted to think about. The culture of the SCTC reinforced these distinctions at every opportunity. Instructors wore their authority like a uniform, speaking in clipped military jargon and expecting immediate compliance from anyone wearing fewer stripes or sporting a lower security clearance. Trainees absorbed this attitude, understanding that their future success depended on demonstrating proper respect for the hierarchy that would soon, hopefully, include them at a higher level. Even the administrative staff maintained careful boundaries, recognizing that their proximity to power came with responsibilities to maintain the established order. But hierarchies, like all human constructions, depend on shared assumptions about who belongs where and why. They function smoothly only when everyone accepts the fundamental premise that visible status accurately reflects actual capability, that obvious authority correlates with genuine competence, and that external appearances provide reliable indicators of internal worth. When those assumptions prove false, when the carefully maintained order encounters a reality that doesn't fit its established categories, the results can be spectacular, devastating, and transformative. And sometimes, just sometimes, those assumptions get shattered by someone who looks exactly like what everyone expects to see, until the moment she doesn't. The woman pushing the industrial mop cart through the corridors of Building 47 was so unremarkable that most people's eyes simply slid past her without registering her presence. Elena Vasquez moved with the deliberate pace of someone who had learned that efficiency mattered less than invisibility, that completing tasks without drawing attention was far more valuable than demonstrating exceptional competence that might invite unwanted scrutiny. At barely 5 feet 3 inches and weighing perhaps 120 pounds soaking wet, Elena appeared to embody every stereotype of the overlooked support worker. Her maintenance uniform, faded navy blue coveralls with Meridian Custodial Services embroidered in block letters across the back, hung loose on her small frame, making her appear even more diminutive than her actual size. The uniform had seen better days, with permanent stains around the thigh, knees from countless hours of floor scrubbing and frayed edges where industrial washing machines had been less than gentle. With the fabric, her appearance suggested someone who had long ago accepted her place in the world's hierarchy. and found peace in modest expectations. Elena's black hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail, secured with a basic elastic band that had seen too many wash cycles. No jewelry adorned her fingers or neck. No makeup enhanced her naturally pleasant but unremarkable features. Her work boots were practical rather than fashionable, steel-toed safety footwear that prioritized function over form. Scuffed from months of navigating concrete floors while hauling cleaning equipment, the mop cart itself told its own story of humble service. The wheeled bucket showed rust stains around the metal fittings, and the mop head had been replaced so many times that the original manufacturer's specifications were purely theoretical. Bottles of industrial cleaning solution shared space with paper towels, trash bags, and the collection of specialized tools required to maintain a military facility, where cleanliness standards bordered on the obsessive. Elena navigated this equipment with practiced efficiency, her movements economical and unobtrusive. Her work routine had become as predictable as the sunrise. Arrive at 0530 hours when the base was still quiet. Collect supplies from the maintenance shed. Begin the systematic cleaning of Building 47, starting from the administrative offices and working toward the training areas. She moved through the facility like a ghost, present but unnoticed, essential but invisible. Her timing was precise. She knew exactly when different areas would be empty, when instructors would be conducting briefings, when trainees would be focused on physical training that required their complete attention to the casual observer. Elena embodied the stereotype of the immigrant service worker who had found stable employment in the vast support network that kept military installations functioning. Her slight accent when she spoke, which was rarely, suggested Spanish as a first language, though her English was perfectly clear when circumstances required verbal communication. The few personnel who interacted with her assumed she was probably supporting family members, perhaps sending money home to relatives in another country. Grateful for steady work that didn't require advanced education or specialized skills, the instructors treated her with the casual dismissiveness reserved for invisible people. They would walk past her mopping, discussing classified training scenarios and sensitive, operational details as if she were a piece of furniture rather than a human being with functioning ears. Their conversations flowed around her presence without pause or consideration, assuming that someone in her position lacked either the education to understand military jargon or the security clearance to make such understanding dangerous. Even the trainees, despite their own precarious position in the facility's hierarchy, regarded Elena with a mixture of indifference and unconscious superiority. They were, after all, future special operations warriors, selected for their exceptional physical capabilities and mental toughness. She was merely part of the support infrastructure that enabled their transformation from ordinary military personnel into elite operators. The distinction seemed obvious and natural to everyone involved. Elena's behavior reinforced these assumptions at every turn. When instructors needed her to clean around their equipment during training sessions, she waited patiently for permission before proceeding, her posture deferential and her movements careful to avoid disrupting their important work. She never initiated conversations, rarely made eye contact unless directly addressed, and responded to questions with the minimum words necessary to convey information. Her demeanor suggested someone who understood her place and had no aspirations beyond fulfilling her assigned duties. Competently and quietly, the few times she had encountered aggressive behavior from personnel who seemed to enjoy asserting dominance over support staff, Elena had absorbed their comments without response. She didn't argue when Instructor Kane criticized her cleaning technique, didn't defend herself when junior personnel made jokes about illegals taking jobs from real Americans, didn't react visibly when administrative staff spoke about her in the third person while she worked within earshot. Her silence and apparent resignation only reinforced the impression that she was exactly what she appeared to be, a humble custodial worker. grateful for employment and unwilling to risk her position by showing anything resembling pride or independence. Her work quality was adequate, but not exceptional. Good enough to avoid complaints, but not so outstanding as to attract attention. She cleaned thoroughly, but not obsessively. Maintained equipment properly, but didn't suggest improvements to established procedures. Completed her assigned tasks within the expected timeframes without demonstrating unusual efficiency that might invite additional responsibilities. In every measurable way, Elena Vasquez was precisely what the facility's personnel database indicated: a reliable, unremarkable custodial contractor earning a modest wage for honest work. But there were small details that didn't quite fit the narrative. Subtle inconsistencies that would have been noticeable to anyone paying close attention. The way she automatically positioned herself with her back to walls when possible, maintaining sightlines to exits even while focused on cleaning tasks. The precise control she demonstrated when handling equipment, movements that suggested familiarity with tools more sophisticated than mops and buckets. The alertness in her dark eyes when she thought no one was watching. A quality of attention that seemed disproportionate to the requirements of custodial work. Her hands told their own story to anyone with the expertise to read the signs. Calluses and patterns that suggested more than cleaning equipment. Small scars that spoke of activities more demanding than floor maintenance. Muscle definition that implied regular training despite her deceptively soft appearance. But in a facility where everyone was focused on their own advancement, their own challenges, their own place in the carefully maintained hierarchy. These details passed unnoticed like background noise in a symphony of assumptions and expectations. Elena Vasquez had perfected the art of being exactly what people expected to see. Nothing more and nothing less. She was the invisible woman who enabled their important work. The forgettable figure who made their environment functional. The humble immigrant who appreciated any opportunity to contribute to American military readiness, even in the most modest capacity. And for 4 months, this carefully constructed identity had served its purpose perfectly. Until today, when everything would change. The morning briefing room in Building 47 buzzed with the particular energy that preceded another day of breaking down candidates and rebuilding them as warriors. Master Instructor Vance Blackwood stood at the head of the polished conference table, his presence commanding immediate attention from the assembled training cadre. At 45, Blackwood had cultivated an image of uncompromising excellence that extended from his perfectly pressed uniform to his razor-sharp tactical knowledge, earned through deployments, that had taken him from the mountains of Afghanistan to the urban warfare zones of Iraq. His voice carried the authority of someone accustomed to instant obedience as he outlined the day's training schedule. Gentlemen, today we separate the pretenders from the future operators. Phase 3 candidates begin underwater navigation trials at 0800, followed by close-quarters battle scenarios in the kill house at 1200. I want maximum stress, minimum hand-holding. If they can't handle pressure here, they'll get people killed in the real world. Chief Petty Officer Marcus Kane nodded approvingly from his position near the tactical display board. Kane was Blackwood's most trusted lieutenant, a man whose psychological warfare expertise had been honed through years of breaking enemy combatants during interrogations and rebuilding American candidates into unbreakable weapons. His approach to training bordered on the sadistic, but his results were undeniable. Candidates who survived Kane's psychological gauntlet emerged with mental fortitude that enabled them to function under conditions that would shatter ordinary human beings. I've identified 3 candidates showing weakness under stress, Kane reported, consulting his tablet with clinical precision. Williams cracked during yesterday's hostage rescue scenario, started second-guessing his breach decisions. Martinez showed hesitation during the live-fire exercises, flinched when rounds came close. And Thompson? Kane's smile was predatory. Thompson actually asked for a timeout during the water survival course. Said he needed to catch his breath. Petty Officer First Class Diana Torres laughed harshly from her position near the weapons display. Torres had earned her reputation as the facility's most demanding close quarters combat instructor through a combination of exceptional skill and absolute intolerance for mediocrity. Her philosophy was brutally simple. In real combat, hesitation meant death, so she eliminated hesitation through relentless pressure that pushed candidates beyond their breaking points and forced them to discover reserves they didn't know they possessed. Thompson's been struggling since day one, Torres observed, her tone carrying the dismissive certainty of someone who had seen hundreds of candidates flame out. He's got the physical tools, but lacks the mental edge. Some people are born warriors, others are born to support warriors. The sooner we identify which category someone belongs in, the less time we waste on false hope. Senior Chief Miguel Santos, the facility's master weapons instructor, stroked his graying beard thoughtfully. Santos was old-school military, a man who had learned his craft when training was even more brutal than current standards allowed. He had trained thousands of operators over his 28-year career, developing an almost supernatural ability to predict which candidates would succeed and which would wash out, usually within the first week of intensive training. Physical capabilities can be developed, Santos said slowly, his weathered voice carrying the wisdom of decades in special operations. Mental toughness can be forged through proper pressure and motivation. But the warrior spirit, that indefinable quality that separates sheep from sheepdogs, either exists or it doesn't. You can't teach someone to want victory more than they fear death. You can't train someone to value mission success above personal comfort. Either they have it or they don't. The discussion continued with the clinical detachment of surgeons, discussing which patients were worth saving and which should be allowed to die peacefully. Each instructor contributed their assessment of individual candidates, identifying weaknesses to exploit and strengths to build upon. They spoke about human beings like pieces of equipment, evaluating performance metrics and calculating probability of operational success with the same emotional investment they might show when discussing vehicle maintenance schedules. Lieutenant Commander Jessica Morrison, the facility's administrative officer, listened to these assessments with growing satisfaction. Morrison was a career bureaucrat who had never seen combat, but had mastered the art of military politics with ruthless efficiency. She understood that her position depended on maintaining the ACTC's reputation for producing elite operators, which required maintaining standards that most people would consider inhumane. The more candidates who failed, the more exclusive and prestigious the program appeared to outside observers. Our metrics continue to exceed Naval Special Warfare Command expectations, Morrison reported, consulting her ever-present clipboard filled with performance statistics. Current phase attrition rate is running at 87%, well within historical norms. Congressional oversight committees continue to receive reports, demonstrating that our training produces operators with significantly higher mission success rates than less demanding programs. The Secretary's office has requested detailed briefings on our methodologies for potential expansion to other special operations communities. The pride in her voice was unmistakable. Morrison viewed high attrition rates as proof of quality rather than evidence of excessive harshness. In her worldview, the more people who failed to meet standards, the more valuable those standards became. She collected failure statistics like trophies, each broken candidate representing validation of the program's elite status and her own administrative competence. Blackwood's expression showed satisfaction as he absorbed these reports. The CTC's reputation depended on producing operators who were genuinely superior to their peers, and that superiority could only be achieved through training that pushed human capabilities to their absolute limits. He had built his career on the principle that kindness was the enemy of excellence, that sympathy was a luxury that got people killed in combat, that the only mercy worth showing was the mercy of preparing warriors so thoroughly that they returned home alive. Excellent work, all of you, Blackwood declared, his voice carrying the approval of a commander, satisfied with his subordinates' performance. Remember, we're not running a daycare center for military wannabes. We're forging weapons that will defend American interests in the world's most dangerous places. Every candidate who washes out here is potentially a life saved in combat, because that person won't be in a position to fail when failure means death for entire teams. The instructors nodded in unison, their shared worldview reinforced by their leader's validation. They saw themselves as guardians of standards that separated civilization from chaos, protectors of an elite tradition that ensured America's military superiority remained unchallenged. Their methods might seem harsh to outsiders, but those outsiders had never faced enemy. Fire in places where American weakness invited aggression and American strength prevented conflicts before they started. As the briefing concluded and instructors began moving toward their assigned training areas, none of them noticed the figure in custodial coveralls working quietly near the conference room entrance. Elena Vasquez continued mopping the hallway floor with mechanical precision, her movements steady and unremarkable as the most dangerous people in the facility walked past her discussing their plans to break young warriors and rebuild them as living weapons. To Blackwood and his team, she was invisible furniture, part of the support infrastructure that enabled their important work. They discussed classified training methods and sensitive candidate assessments within her hearing, assuming that someone in her position lacked either the education to understand their conversations or the security clearance to make such understanding problematic. But Elena's dark eyes tracked their movements with an alertness that seemed disproportionate to custodial requirements, and her grip on the mop handle showed the subtle tension of someone processing information rather than someone focused solely on cleaning floors. The predators had revealed their hunting strategies, unaware that they were being observed by someone who understood exactly what those strategies meant and exactly how effectively they could be countered. Master Chief Petty Officer Rachel Martinez had developed an eye for details. During her 18 years in naval special warfare, a survival skill honed through deployments, where noticing the wrong shadow or the out-of-place object could mean the difference between completing a mission and coming home in a body bag. As the CTC's senior enlisted advisor, Martinez served as the bridge between the officer instructors and the enlisted personnel, who actually implemented their training programs, a position that required her to observe everything while appearing to notice nothing unusual. This particular morning, as she conducted her routine inspection of Building 47's training areas, something nagged at the edges of her consciousness like a persistent itch she couldn't quite locate. The facility hummed with its normal pre-training energy, instructors reviewing lesson plans, medical personnel preparing for the inevitable injuries that accompanied realistic combat training, and support staff ensuring that every piece of equipment was positioned exactly where it needed to be for maximum training effectiveness. But there was something different. Something that didn't quite fit the established patterns she had memorized over 3 years of managing this facility. Martinez paused near the weapons storage area, ostensibly reviewing inventory logs on her tablet, while actually allowing her peripheral vision to sweep the surrounding area. Her instincts, developed through years of identifying threats in hostile environments, were sending subtle warnings that she couldn't yet articulate or explain. The custodial worker, Elena something, according to the contractor logs Martinez had reviewed that morning, was conducting her normal cleaning routine near the armory entrance. Nothing unusual about her presence. Maintenance personnel were scheduled to sanitize the weapons storage area, every 72 hours according to regulations that Martinez herself had helped develop. The woman moved with appropriate efficiency, her movements economical and professional as she wiped down surfaces that would be contaminated again within hours by the natural oils and residue that accompanied intensive weapons training. But there was something about the way Elena handled the cleaning equipment that caught Martinez's attention, a precision that seemed disproportionate to the requirements of custodial work. The woman's grip on the spray bottle showed perfect trigger discipline, her finger positioned alongside the device rather than directly on the activation mechanism. It was a tiny detail, meaningless to most observers, but to someone with Martinez's background, it suggested muscle memory developed through extensive firearms training. Martinez moved closer, pretending to inspect a weapons rack while actually observing Elena's work technique. The custodial worker was cleaning around a display of M4 carbines, her movements careful and respectful around weapons that many civilians would handle with visible nervousness or inappropriate casualness. But Elena's approach was different. She maintained appropriate distance from the firearms while demonstrating an understanding of their basic components and safety requirements that seemed unusual for someone whose job description involved mops and cleaning solutions. When Elena reached for a cleaning cloth, her movement was economical and precise, keeping her hands visible and her actions predictable in a way that suggested familiarity with weapons storage protocols. Most civilian contractors required multiple briefings about proper behavior around military equipment, but this woman moved with an intuitive understanding of appropriate procedures that typically came only from extensive military experience. Martinez's tactical awareness heightened as she noticed additional details that individually meant nothing but collectively painted a picture that didn't match the official personnel records. Elena's posture while working maintained situational awareness, her head position allowing peripheral observation of multiple exit routes even while focused on cleaning tasks. Her breathing remained steady and controlled despite the physical demands of her work, suggesting cardiovascular conditioning that exceeded civilian fitness standards. The way Elena's coveralls fit revealed muscle definition that spoke of regular, intensive physical training. Her shoulders showed the development that came from extensive upper body work, particularly the kind associated with rope climbing and calisthenics rather than recreational fitness. Her forearms displayed the wiry strength that developed through repetitive grip-intensive activities, and her core stability during bending and lifting movements suggested someone accustomed to carrying heavy equipment over challenging terrain. Martinez found herself studying Elena's hands more carefully as the woman worked near the weapons display. Calluses in specific patterns marked her palms and fingers, thick pads of hardened skin that told stories about regular contact with rough surfaces and specialized equipment. These weren't the calluses of custodial work or even general construction labor. They were tactical calluses, the kind that developed through extensive training with ropes, weapons, and climbing equipment. More significantly, Martinez noticed small scars along Elena's knuckles and the backs of her hands, marks that suggested close-quarters combat training rather than household accidents or industrial mishaps. One particular scar along her right thumb showed the distinctive pattern of a knife-fighting injury, the kind that occurred when someone learned to disarm opponents through practical application rather than theoretical instruction. Elena's movement patterns reinforced Martinez's growing suspicions. The woman automatically maintained what military personnel called tactical spacing from other individuals, positioning herself at distances that would allow rapid response to potential threats. When she turned corners, she sliced the pie like someone trained in room-clearing techniques. Her footfalls were consistently quiet, despite the industrial boots she wore, suggesting someone who had learned to move silently through hostile environments, where noise could compromise missions. The most telling Detail emerged when Elena was cleaning near a tactical communications display. As she worked around the sophisticated radio equipment, her eyes briefly tracked across the control interfaces with a familiarity that suggested operational experience rather than casual curiosity. She recognized the equipment, understood its capabilities, and demonstrated the unconscious awareness of someone who had relied on similar technology in field conditions. Martinez's military experience had taught her to trust her instincts, even when she couldn't immediately explain their warnings. Every detail she observed could be explained away individually. Perhaps Elena had served in the military before becoming a custodial contractor. Perhaps she had family members in special operations. Perhaps she was simply more observant and physically capable than her job description required. But the accumulation of evidence suggested something far more significant than a former enlisted person working civilian maintenance: the tactical awareness, the weapons familiarity, the physical conditioning, the movement patterns, the alertness levels. These indicators painted a picture of someone with advanced military training, possibly special operations experience. Martinez had worked with enough elite operators to recognize the subtle signs that distinguished them from conventional military personnel. And this custodial worker was displaying multiple characteristics that suggested capabilities far beyond her apparent position. Martinez made a mental note to review Elena's background more thoroughly, to examine her security clearance documentation and employment history with greater scrutiny. In her experience, people with advanced military training rarely chose custodial work unless they had compelling reasons for seeking anonymity or maintaining low profiles. Sometimes those reasons were benign: veterans struggling with readjustment, former operators seeking peaceful transitions to civilian life. But sometimes those reasons involved situations that required more careful investigation. For now, Martinez would continue observing without alerting Elena to her suspicions. If the woman was indeed more than she appeared, premature confrontation could compromise whatever mission or objective had brought her to the ACTC. And if Martinez's instincts were wrong, unnecessary scrutiny could damage the career and reputation of someone who was simply trying to earn an honest living in whatever way circumstances allowed. But as Martinez completed her inspection and moved toward the training areas where instructors were beginning to implement their daily programs designed to break candidates and rebuild them as warriors, she carried with her the certainty that Elena Vasquez was not what she appeared to be. The question wasn't whether this custodial worker had secrets, but what those secrets might mean for the facility's security and the safety of everyone who worked within its walls. The game was beginning, though only Martinez knew that players were positioning themselves on the board. The afternoon training session in the Advanced Combat Skills Laboratory had reached its crescendo of controlled chaos. 23 Phase 3 candidates moved through close quarters battle scenarios designed to push their tactical decision-making abilities beyond conventional limits, while instructor cadre members positioned themselves at strategic observation points to evaluate performance and identify weaknesses that required immediate correction. Master Instructor Blackwood stood elevated on the observation platform, his eagle eyes tracking each candidate's movement through the urban warfare mock-up known affectionately as Little Fallujah, a meticulously constructed replica of Middle Eastern architecture, complete with blind corners, hidden sniper positions, and booby-trapped doorways that had claimed the careers of countless overconfident trainees. The facility's crown jewel represented millions of dollars in construction and technological integration, featuring programmable threat scenarios that could adapt in real time to challenge even the most experienced operators. Martinez, you're telegraphing your movements. Chief Kane's voice boomed across the training floor as he critiqued a candidate's breach technique. In a real urban environment, that hesitation gets your entire team killed. Decisive action, smooth execution. No second guessing once you've committed to the approach. The candidate in question, Petty Officer Second Class David Martinez, a former Marine reconnaissance specialist who had dominated every previous training phase, was struggling with the psychological pressure of live-fire exercises conducted in confined spaces. Despite his impressive physical capabilities and demonstrated tactical knowledge, Martinez was showing signs of decision paralysis when faced with split-second choices that required him to balance mission objectives against team safety concerns. Diana Torres moved through the kill house like a predatory cat. Her experienced eye-catching details that less seasoned instructors might miss. She noticed how candidate Williams was favoring his left shoulder following yesterday's rope climb training, how Thompson was compensating for a knee injury by adjusting his movement patterns in ways that compromised his tactical effectiveness, and how Rodriguez was allowing personal rivalries with fellow candidates to influence his team coordination decisions. Rodriguez, this isn't about proving you're tougher than Williams, Torres called out sharply. This is about mission accomplishment through effective teamwork. Save your ego competition for the bar in combat. Personality conflicts get people killed. The training environment was designed to overwhelm candidates with sensory input and tactical challenges that exceeded anything they would face in their previous military experience. Smoke machines created visibility restrictions that forced reliance on sound and movement detection. Strobe lights simulated the disorienting effects of flashbang grenades. Audio speakers projected realistic battle sounds, gunfire, explosions, screaming civilians that tested each candidate's ability to filter relevant information. From background chaos. Elena Vasquez had positioned her cleaning station near the equipment storage area, adjacent to the main training floor, ostensibly organizing medical supplies and safety equipment while the exercises continued. Her maintenance schedule indicated that this area required attention during afternoon training periods, ensuring that emergency medical gear remained accessible and properly inventoried in case training accidents required immediate intervention. But Elena's attention was focused far more intently on the training scenarios unfolding before her than her custodial duties would require. Her dark eyes tracked candidate movements with a precision that suggested professional interest rather than casual curiosity. She was analyzing tactical approaches, evaluating instructor feedback, and assessing the overall quality of training being provided to these future Special Operations personnel. As she watched Martinez struggle with his breach techniques, Elena's grip tightened almost imperceptibly on the medical supply checklist she was pretending to review. Her tactical experience provided immediate insight into the candidate's problem. He was overthinking scenarios that required instinctive responses, allowing rational analysis to interfere with the aggressive decision-making that successful room clearing demanded. The solution was straightforward: intensive repetition under gradually increasing pressure, until proper techniques became automatic responses that bypassed conscious thought processes. When candidate Williams executed a textbook corner approach but failed to maintain proper spacing with his team members, Elena found herself mentally noting the correction that Torres should have provided. Remind Williams that individual excellence meant nothing if it compromised team integrity. That special operations succeeded through coordinated effort rather than heroic individual performance. The most concerning observation came when Elena watched Thompson freeze during a hostage rescue scenario that required split-second decisions about civilian versus combatant identification. Thompson's hesitation lasted only 2 seconds, but in real combat situations, 2 seconds of indecision could result in innocent deaths or mission failure. Elena had seen similar hesitation in young operators during her own tactical experience, and she knew that this particular weakness required immediate Intensive correction before it became a permanent psychological limitation. Senior Chief Santos was conducting weapons malfunction drills near Elena's cleaning station, forcing candidates to clear jammed firearms while under simulated enemy fire. Elena observed the exercise with growing concern as she noticed that several candidates were demonstrating improper clearing techniques that would prove ineffective under actual combat stress. Their movements were technically correct, but lacked the fluid efficiency that came from extensive practical experience. Elena found herself unconsciously analyzing the training scenario and identifying improvements that would enhance its educational value. The malfunction simulation was too predictable. Candidates were learning to expect specific types of failures, rather than developing adaptability to handle unexpected mechanical problems. The stress inducers were insufficient to replicate the psychological pressure of actual combat, where adrenaline and fear affected fine motor control in ways that sterile training environments couldn't adequately simulate. Master Chief Martinez had positioned herself where she could observe both the training exercises and Elena's reactions to them. Martinez's earlier suspicions were being confirmed as she watched the custodial workers' response to the tactical scenarios. Elena's body language showed engagement levels that far exceeded appropriate interest from support personnel. Her positioning allowed optimal observation of training techniques, and her attention pattern suggested someone with sufficient military experience to evaluate instructor performance and candidate competence. Most tellingly, Martinez noticed that Elena's facial expressions occasionally showed what appeared to be professional frustration with training methods or candidate performance. It was subtle, a slight tightening around the eyes when instructors missed teaching opportunities, a barely perceptible head shake when candidates made tactical errors that should have been corrected more aggressively. These reactions suggested someone with enough expertise to recognize deficiencies in elite-level military training. When candidate Johnson executed a particularly sloppy magazine change during a live-fire exercise, Elena's hands briefly mimicked the proper technique before she caught herself and returned to her cleaning checklist. The movement was automatic, instinctive, the kind of muscle memory that developed through thousands of repetitions under combat conditions. Martinez had seen similar unconscious reactions from veterans who had spent years training others in tactical skills. The afternoon's most revealing moment came when a training accident occurred in the kill house. Candidate Peterson misjudged a rappelling approach and impacted the concrete floor with enough force to produce obvious signs of serious injury. As instructors and medical personnel responded to the emergency, Elena's reaction provided Martinez with definitive confirmation of her suspicions. Elena moved toward the accident scene with practiced efficiency, her cleaning equipment abandoned as she automatically shifted into tactical response mode. Her assessment of Peterson's condition was immediate and professional. She identified potential spinal injury, evaluated breathing patterns, and positioned herself to provide assistance if required. Her movements showed the controlled urgency of someone trained in battlefield medicine rather than the panicked concern that civilians typically displayed during medical emergencies. When medical personnel arrived and began treating Peterson, Elena stepped back appropriately. But Martinez noticed that her eyes continued tracking their procedures with the analytical attention of someone evaluating medical technique rather than simply observing emergency response. Elena was assessing whether the medical team was applying appropriate protocols, whether their treatment decisions were optimal given Peterson's injuries, whether their response time and coordination met professional standards. As the emergency subsided and training resumed with heightened safety awareness, Martinez made her decision. Elena Vasquez was definitely more than she appeared to be, and her presence in the facility required investigation that went beyond routine background checks. The question was no longer whether this custodial worker had military experience, The question was what kind of experience, what level of classification, and what had brought someone with her apparent capabilities to seek anonymity in a maintenance position. Martinez began planning her approach carefully. Direct confrontation could be counterproductive if Elena had legitimate reasons for maintaining her cover identity. But continued observation without action could pose security risks if Elena's presence represented some kind of threat to facility operations or personnel safety. The game was escalating, and Martinez was ready to make the next move. The evening equipment. Maintenance period at 1900 hours had become Elena's most challenging operational window since beginning her assignment at Naval Air Station Meridian. Unlike the predictable morning routines when personnel followed established schedules, evening maintenance brought unpredictable interactions with instructors who lingered after official training hours. Reviewing candidate performance and planning modifications to training scenarios based on observed weaknesses and emerging tactical requirements. Elena had positioned herself in the armory, adjacent to the main training floor, ostensibly conducting the weekly deep cleaning protocol that regulations required for weapon storage areas. The task provided legitimate access to advanced military hardware while maintaining her custodial cover identity, but it also placed her in proximity to instructors who were discussing sensitive training modifications and candidate assessment criteria with the casual assumption that support personnel lacked sufficient clearance or education to understand classified information. Master Instructor Blackwood was reviewing video footage from the afternoon's Killhouse exercises on a tablet connected to the facility's secure training analysis network. The system captured multi-angle recordings of every training scenario, allowing instructors to conduct detailed performance reviews and identify specific areas where candidates required additional instruction or remediation. Blackwood's commentary was brutally honest as he analyzed each candidate's tactical decision-making processes. Johnson's magazine changes are still too slow for combat effectiveness, Blackwood observed to Chief Kane, who was cataloging training ammunition expenditures near Elena's cleaning station. He's technically proficient, but lacks the muscle memory that comes from intensive repetition under stress. We need to increase his leave-fire training frequency and introduce more aggressive time constraints until proper technique becomes automatic. Kane nodded agreement while reviewing his tablet inventory logs. Johnson's also showing hesitation during room clearing exercises. He's overthinking target identification protocols instead of trusting his training and making decisive engagement decisions. In real combat, that hesitation gets hostages killed and provides enemy combatants with opportunities to eliminate entire teams. Elena continued her methodical cleaning routine around an array of M4 carbines, each weapon secured in precise formation within the armory's climate-controlled storage racks. Her movements were deliberately unremarkable as she wiped down surfaces that would accumulate dust and fingerprints again within hours, but her attention was focused intently on the instructor's conversation. Their assessment of candidate performance revealed tactical knowledge, gaps that she recognized from her own operational experience. As Elena worked near a display of advanced optics equipment, her hands moved with unconscious precision around sophisticated sighting systems that civilian custodial workers would typically handle with visible nervousness or inappropriate casualness. But Elena's approach demonstrated intuitive understanding of proper handling procedures for sensitive military hardware, suggesting familiarity with equipment specifications that extended well beyond basic maintenance requirements. Chief Kane approached Elena's cleaning station while reviewing candidate psychological profiles on his tablet, a device connected to classified personnel databases that contain detailed analysis of each trainee's mental resilience and stress response patterns. Kane's proximity meant that Elena could observe portions of the psychological assessment data, information that would normally be restricted to personnel with appropriate security clearances, and operational need-to-know authorization. Martinez is showing signs of decision paralysis under extreme pressure. Kane commented to Blackwood, apparently oblivious to Elena's presence within earshot of their conversation. His tactical knowledge is solid, his physical capabilities are adequate, but he's allowing rational analysis to interfere with instinctive combat responses. We may need to implement additional stress inoculation training to break through his psychological barriers. Elena's cleaning cloth paused almost imperceptibly as she processed Kane's assessment. Her operational experience provided immediate insight into Martinez's psychological profile. He was experiencing the same analytical paralysis that affected many intelligent operators who relied too heavily on conscious decision-making instead of trusting their training to guide automatic responses. The solution required specific training modifications that Elena could have recommended based on her own experience developing junior operators. Senior Chief Santos entered the armory carrying a selection of specialized weapons that required secure storage following the day's advanced marksmanship training. Santos moved with the careful precision of someone who had handled military hardware for decades. His movements economical and professional as he positioned each weapon in its designated storage location according to strict security protocols. "Evening, Elena," Santos said pleasantly, acknowledging the custodial worker with the casual friendliness that characterized his interactions with all facility personnel, regardless of their position in the hierarchy. Santos was old-school military, someone who had learned that effective leadership required treating everyone with basic respect while maintaining appropriate professional boundaries. "Good evening, Senior Chief," Elena replied quietly, her voice carrying the deferential tone that custodial contractors typically used when addressing senior military personnel. Her response was perfectly appropriate for her supposed position, but Santos's experienced eye noticed subtle details that didn't quite match his expectations. For civilian support staff, Elena's posture while acknowledging Santos demonstrated automatic military courtesy that suggested previous service experience. Her eye contact was direct and confident rather than submissive. Her bearing showed discipline that exceeded civilian workplace standards, and her verbal response carried undertones of professional respect rather than the nervous deference that characterized most contractor interactions with senior enlisted personnel. More significantly, Santos observed that Elena's hands continued working around the weapons display without the heightened caution that civilians typically demonstrated near military hardware. She maintained appropriate distance from the firearms, while showing intuitive understanding of safety protocols that usually required extensive briefing for personnel without military backgrounds. Her comfort level around advanced weapon systems suggested familiarity that extended beyond basic maintenance training. As Santos secured the specialized weapons, he noticed Elena's eyes briefly tracking his handling procedures with professional interest that seemed disproportionate to custodial requirements. She was observing his technique with the analytical attention of someone who understood weapons, capabilities, and operational applications rather than someone focused solely on cleaning responsibilities around military equipment. "How long have you been working here, Elena?" Santos asked conversationally while completing his storage procedures, his tone casual but his attention focused on her response patterns. Santos had developed expertise in reading people during his military career, learning to identify potential threats and assess personnel capabilities through careful observation of behavioral indicators. 4 months. Senior Chief, Elena replied, maintaining her cleaning routine while engaging in appropriate social interaction with a senior military member. "I appreciate the opportunity to contribute to the facility's mission, even in a support capacity." Everyone here works very hard to maintain the highest standards. Santos nodded approvingly at her response, but his tactical awareness noted that Elena's language patterns seemed more sophisticated than typical contractor communications. Her vocabulary choices, sentence structure, and professional terminology suggested education and experience levels that exceeded her apparent position requirements. Most civilian custodial workers didn't discuss facility, missions, or reference contributing to standards. With Elena's apparent understanding of military culture and organizational objectives, conversation was interrupted when Master Chief Martinez entered the armory, her presence immediately commanding attention from everyone present. Martinez moved with the purposeful authority of someone conducting official business, her eyes quickly scanning the area to assess current activities and personnel locations before focusing on specific operational requirements. Santos, I need you to review the weapons accountability logs from today's training, Martinez directed, consulting her tablet for specific information. We had some irregular ammunition expenditure numbers that require investigation before tomorrow's congressional oversight briefing. Can't afford any discrepancies when politicians are looking for budget justification problems. As Martinez and Santos began reviewing the complex logistics documentation, Elena found herself positioned where she could observe their tablet, screens displaying classified training information and weapons accountability data. The proximity was coincidental, a result of her legitimate cleaning responsibilities rather than any deliberate attempt to access restricted information. But Martinez noticed Elena's unconscious professional interest in military logistics procedures. Elena's eyes briefly tracked across the accountability spreadsheets with recognition that suggested understanding of military supply chain management and weapons tracking protocols. Her facial expression showed the subtle engagement of someone who comprehended the significance of ammunition expenditure analysis rather than someone focused solely on custodial duties around military personnel conducting administrative work. Martinez made mental notes about Elena's reaction patterns while maintaining her official conversation with Santos about accountability procedures. The custodial worker was displaying multiple indicators of advanced military experience, and Martinez was becoming increasingly certain that Elena Vasquez represented something far more significant than routine contractor personnel assigned to facility maintenance duties. Evening's most revealing moment occurred when a security alarm activated, indicating potential unauthorized access to restricted areas within Building 47. Standard protocol required immediate personnel accountability and security assessment, procedures that Elena should have been unfamiliar with as civilian support staff without security clearance or emergency response training. But Elena's reaction was immediate and professional, automatically positioning herself in a location that provided optimal observation of potential threat vectors while maintaining appropriate distance from military personnel who were implementing security protocols. Her body language showed controlled alertness rather than civilian panic, and her movement patterns demonstrated tactical awareness that suggested extensive experience with emergency response procedures. Martinez observed Elena's security response with growing certainty that this custodial worker was not what she appeared to be. The security alarm's piercing wail cut through the evening maintenance routine like a blade, transforming the orderly atmosphere of Building 47 into a landscape of controlled emergency response. Within seconds, the facility's automated systems activated lockdown protocols that sealed external access points and triggered accountability procedures designed to identify potential security breaches or unauthorized personnel movements within restricted areas. Lieutenant Commander Morrison emerged from the administrative office complex, moving with the urgent efficiency that characterized her response to any situation that threatened the facility's operational security or regulatory compliance. Her clipboard had been replaced by a secure tablet displaying real-time security, monitoring data from the building's sophisticated surveillance network. A system capable of tracking personnel movements throughout the facility with precision that exceeded civilian security standards by several orders of magnitude. All personnel maintain current positions pending security sweep completion, Morrison announced, her voice carrying the authority of someone accustomed to immediate compliance during emergency situations. Department heads report accountability status within 60 seconds. No personnel movement except emergency response teams until all clear authorization. Elena found herself positioned near the armory entrance, technically within the weapons storage area where her custodial duties provided legitimate access, but also in a location that would require explanation if security personnel questioned her presence during emergency protocols. Standard facility procedures called for civilian contractors to evacuate to designated safe areas during security alerts, removing non-essential personnel from areas where their presence could complicate emergency response or compromise sensitive operations. But Elena's positioning was neither accidental nor panicked. She had automatically moved to a location that provided optimal observation of potential threat vectors while maintaining cover that would explain her presence to security personnel conducting facility sweeps. Her tactical experience had guided her to a position that balanced operational awareness with maintenance of her cover identity, demonstrating decision-making capabilities that exceeded civilian contractor training. Master Chief Martinez observed Elena's emergency response with laser focus, noting details that confirmed her growing suspicions about the custodial worker's true background and capabilities. Elena's body language showed controlled alertness rather than civilian anxiety. Her positioning demonstrated tactical thinking that suggested extensive security training, and her overall demeanor indicated comfort with emergency procedures that should have been unfamiliar to someone in her apparent position. Chief Kane moved through the facility, conducting rapid personnel accountability, his tablet displaying roster information that allowed him to verify the location and status of every individual who should have been present during evening maintenance periods. Kane's security training enabled him to identify potential anomalies or unauthorized personnel quickly, but his attention was focused primarily on ensuring that all assigned military personnel were accounted for rather than analyzing civilian contractor behavior patterns. Elena Vasquez, custodial contractor, present and accounted for in armory section. Kane reported into his communications device while making visual contact with Elena near the weapons storage area. His confirmation was routine, part of the standard accountability process. But Martinez noticed that Kane's assessment of Elena showed the same superficial evaluation that characterized most military personnel's interactions with support staff: functional verification without deeper analysis. Security sweep revealed its trigger within minutes when facility surveillance systems identified the cause of the alarm activation. A maintenance access panel in the building's climate control system had been opened without proper authorization codes, triggering automated security protocols designed to detect potential infiltration attempts or unauthorized access to sensitive facility infrastructure. Investigation revealed that the panel had been accessed by a scheduled HVAC contractor who had failed to coordinate properly with base security, creating a false alarm that demonstrated the system's effectiveness, while highlighting procedural gaps in contractor coordination. As security personnel confirmed that no actual threat existed and began deactivating emergency protocols. Elena's behavior during the alert resolution provided Martinez with additional evidence that supported her growing certainty about the custodial worker's true capabilities. Elena had maintained professional composure throughout the emergency, demonstrated appropriate security awareness, without revealing unauthorized knowledge of classified procedures, and positioned herself in ways that balanced tactical considerations with maintenance of her cover identity. Most significantly, Elena's reaction to the all-clear announcement showed subtle signs of tactical assessment rather than civilian relief. She briefly scanned the facility layout with the analytical attention of someone evaluating security response effectiveness, her eyes tracking emergency personnel movements with professional interest that suggested operational experience rather than casual curiosity about military procedures. Senior Chief Santos approached. Elena's position as normal facility operations resumed, his demeanor showing the casual friendliness that characterized his interactions with all personnel regardless of their apparent status in the facility's hierarchy. But Santos's experienced eye was conducting careful observation of Elena's post-emergency behavior, noting details that either confirmed or contradicted his growing suspicions about her background and qualifications. "Exciting evening," Santos commented pleasantly while securing weapons that had been temporarily relocated during the security sweep. "False alarms are always better than real emergencies, but they do keep everyone on their toes. How are you handling all the excitement? Not too stressful for civilian work?" Elena's response was carefully calibrated to maintain her cover identity while engaging appropriately with Santos's friendly inquiry. "It's certainly different from my previous cleaning jobs, Senior Chief. Everyone here responds so professionally to unexpected situations. I'm impressed by how quickly you all handled everything." Santos nodded approvingly at her answer, but his tactical awareness noted subtle indicators that suggested Elena's comfort level with security procedures exceeded her apparent civilian background. Her vocabulary choices demonstrated familiarity with military terminology and operational concepts. Her assessment of the emergency response showed understanding of security protocols, and her overall demeanor indicated experience with facility security rather than the nervous uncertainty that characterized most civilian contractors. Reactions to military emergency procedures. Martinez positioned herself where she could continue observing Elena's interactions without appearing to conduct deliberate surveillance. The accumulation of evidence was becoming overwhelming. Elena Vasquez was demonstrating capabilities, knowledge, and experience that far exceeded her official position requirements. The question was no longer whether Elena had military background, but what level of classification and operational experience she possessed, and what circumstances had brought someone with her apparent qualifications to seek employment as a custodial contractor. The evening's most decisive moment occurred when Master Instructor Blackwood approached the armory to conduct his routine end-of-day weapons security verification. Blackwood's inspection was thorough and systematic, checking each weapon's serial number against accountability logs while ensuring that all advanced optics and specialized equipment had been properly secured according to regulations that carried severe penalties for violations. As Blackwood conducted his inspection, Elena continued her cleaning routine around the weapons display with movements that demonstrated unconscious familiarity with military hardware and security procedures. Her positioning automatically maintained appropriate distance from classified equipment while showing intuitive understanding of safety protocols that typically required extensive briefing for civilian personnel. But the revealing moment came when Blackwood briefly set his tablet on a nearby surface while adjusting a weapon mount, leaving the device displaying classified training evaluation data within Elena's potential line of sight. Standard security procedures required that classified information be protected from unauthorized viewing, but Blackwood's action was routine given his assumption that Elena lacked sufficient clearance to understand the displayed material. Elena's reaction provided Martinez with definitive confirmation of her suspicions. Rather than showing casual curiosity about the unfamiliar tablet display, Elena deliberately averted her eyes from the classified information, demonstrating security awareness that suggested extensive experience with compartmentalized intelligence and need-to-know protocols. Her behavior indicated someone who understood the significance of classified material and possessed sufficient discipline to avoid unauthorized access, even when opportunity presented itself. The automatic nature of Elena's security discipline was particularly telling. Her reaction was instinctive rather than calculated, suggesting deeply ingrained training in information security protocols rather than conscious effort to avoid suspicion. Someone without advanced military background would have shown either inappropriate curiosity about the tablet display or nervous uncertainty about proper behavior around military equipment. Martinez made her decision as the evening maintenance period concluded and personnel began securing the facility for overnight operations. Elena Vasquez required immediate investigation through channels that extended beyond routine contractor background verification. The accumulation of evidence strongly suggested that this custodial worker possessed advanced military training, possibly special operations experience, and her presence at the facility demanded explanation that went far beyond standard employment screening procedures. As Elena completed her cleaning routine and prepared to depart for the evening, Martinez began formulating her approach for the confrontation that would determine whether her suspicions represented legitimate security concerns or merely the product of an overactive tactical imagination trained to identify threats. In every anomaly, the game was about to enter its final phase, and Martinez was ready to force Elena's hand. The confrontation came 2,147 hours, 37 minutes after the official end of Elena's shift, when Master Chief Martinez made her move with the calculated precision of a predator who had finished stalking her prey and was ready to force a decisive encounter. Martinez had positioned herself near the facility's main exit, ostensibly conducting routine end-of-day security checks while actually waiting for Elena to complete her departure procedures and attempt to leave building 47 through the primary personnel access point. Elena approached the exit, carrying her standard civilian contractor identification badge and personal belongings, her demeanor showing the controlled fatigue that characterized workers completing another day of routine maintenance duties. Her movements were unremarkable as she prepared to badge out through the electronic security system that tracked all personnel movements and maintained detailed logs of facility access for security and accountability purposes. Elena, could I speak with you for a moment? Martinez's voice was carefully modulated to convey authority without immediate threat, the tone of a senior military professional requesting cooperation rather than demanding compliance through direct confrontation. Martinez's positioning blocked Elena's direct path to the exit while maintaining enough distance to avoid triggering defensive reactions from someone who might possess advanced combat training. Elena paused, her dark eyes meeting Martinez's gaze with steady attention that showed neither surprise nor anxiety about the unexpected interaction. Her response was appropriately respectful for a civilian contractor addressing a senior military member. But Martinez noted that Elena's body language demonstrated controlled alertness rather than the nervous uncertainty that characterized most support personnel when confronted by military leadership. Of course, Master Chief, how can I help you? Elena's tone was polite and professional, her posture appropriately deferential while maintaining the kind of balanced stance that suggested unconscious tactical awareness. Martinez's experienced eye recognized that Elena had automatically positioned herself with access to multiple movement options while appearing to comply with a routine request for conversation. Martinez consulted her tablet, displaying what appeared to be standard contractor documentation while actually accessing classified personnel databases that contained far more detailed information than civilian support staff would typically warrant. The investigation she had conducted following the evening's security alert had revealed discrepancies in Elena's background that raised significant questions about her true identity and qualifications. "I've been reviewing your employment records, and I have some questions that require clarification," Martinez began, her approach methodical and professional. "Your background check shows employment history that's consistent with civilian contractor status, but there are some gaps in your work timeline that need explanation for our security files. Routine verification, nothing unusual. Just ensuring our documentation meets current standards." Elena's reaction provided Martinez with immediate confirmation that this conversation would extend far beyond routine administrative inquiry. Rather than showing the confused cooperation that genuine civilian contractors typically displayed when questioned about employment history, Elena's expression shifted to careful attention that suggested someone preparing to manage information disclosure while maintaining operational security. "I understand your need for complete records, Master Chief," Elena replied, her voice remaining steady while her tactical awareness heightened perceptibly. "I'm happy to provide any additional information that might be helpful for your documentation requirements. What specific time periods need clarification?" Martinez recognized Elena's response as skilled deflection, the kind of information management technique that special operations personnel learned for handling inquiries that might compromise classified activities or reveal sensitive operational details. Elena was buying time to assess the situation while avoiding direct answers that might expose whatever truth lay beneath her custodial contractor cover identity. "Your employment records show a gap from March 2019 through September 2021, Martinez continued, maintaining her official tone while watching Elena's micro-expressions for tells that might reveal emotional reactions to specific timeframes or geographical references. "During that period, your documented work history is incomplete. For security clearance verification, we need to account for all activities during that time." The time frame Martinez had cited was deliberately provocative, corresponding to a period of intensive special operations activity in multiple theaters where American forces had been conducting classified missions against high-value targets. If Elena possessed the military background that Martinez suspected, those dates would have particular significance that might trigger recognizable responses despite Elena's obvious training in information security. Elena's pause before responding lasted exactly 3 seconds, long enough to process the implications of Martinez's inquiry, while short enough to avoid appearing evasive or calculated. Her answer demonstrated sophisticated understanding of security protocols while maintaining plausible civilian explanations for employment gaps that could legitimately exist in contractor work histories. "During that period, I was working overseas contracts that involved international travel and project assignments that didn't always maintain consistent documentation," Elena explained, her language carefully chosen to provide truthful information without revealing specific operational details. "Some of those positions involved companies that have since been restructured or acquired, making employment verification more complicated than standard domestic work history." Martinez nodded as if accepting Elena's explanation while internally recognizing it as exactly the kind of response that former special operations personnel used to explain extended deployments without revealing classified activities. Elena's answer was technically truthful while providing no verifiable details, professionally delivered while avoiding specific commitments that might be checked against official records. "I see," Martinez replied, making notes on her tablet that created the impression of routine documentation while actually preparing for the next phase of her investigation. And what type of overseas contract work were you involved in? The nature of those assignments might help us understand any security considerations that apply to your current position. Elena's hesitation was barely perceptible, a momentary calculation that revealed the challenge of maintaining her cover story when faced with specific inquiries from someone who clearly understood the nuances of military employment history. Her response required balancing truth with operational security, providing enough detail to appear cooperative while avoiding revelations that might compromise whatever mission had brought her to Naval Air Station Meridian. Security consulting and training support, Elena answered, her choice of terminology deliberately broad while remaining technically accurate. International companies often need personnel with specialized knowledge for projects in challenging environments. The work involved supporting various organizations with security assessment and risk management requirements. Martinez's smile was knowing, the expression of someone who had just received confirmation of suspicions that had been building throughout weeks of careful observation. Elena's description was classic special operations cover language, the kind of vague but technically truthful explanation that operators used when civilian employment required plausible explanations for capabilities that exceeded normal contractor qualifications. That's interesting work, Martinez commented, her tone remaining conversational while her eyes conveyed awareness that both women understood the subtext of their exchange. I imagine that type of consulting requires extensive background in security procedures and risk assessment. Probably involves working with some fairly sophisticated equipment and protocols. Elena's response would determine whether this conversation remained a careful dance of mutual recognition or escalated into direct confrontation that could compromise whatever operational objectives had brought her to the facility. Martinez was offering Elena an opportunity to acknowledge their mutual understanding without forcing a complete revelation that might damage ongoing missions or compromise security requirements. I've been fortunate to work with experienced professionals who taught me valuable skills, Elena replied, her answer acknowledging Martinez's implication while maintaining plausible civilian explanations for capabilities that had been observed during her employment at the facility. The training and experience from that work has been helpful in understanding security requirements and maintaining appropriate standards in various work environments. The conversation was interrupted by the approach of Chief Kane, who emerged from Building 47 carrying classified training materials that required secure storage in the administrative complex. Kane's presence complicated the dynamic of Martinez's investigation. Introducing a witness whose security awareness might detect the underlying tension between the two women while lacking sufficient context to understand its significance. Evening, Master Chief Elena, Kane said pleasantly, acknowledging both women with the casual professionalism that characterized his interactions with facility personnel. Working late tonight? Hope everything's going smoothly with the security documentation review. Martinez's response was carefully neutral, maintaining the impression of routine administrative work while avoiding revelations that might compromise her investigation. Before she was prepared to involve additional personnel in whatever Elena Vasquez represented for facility security and operational integrity. Just finishing up some contractor verification requirements, Martinez replied, her tone suggesting standard bureaucratic procedures rather than the intensive investigation that was actually occurring. Elena has been very cooperative with providing the information we need for our files. Elena remained silent during this exchange, but Martinez noted that her positioning automatically maintained tactical awareness of both military personnel while appearing to wait respectfully for the conversation to conclude. Elena's behavior continued demonstrating capabilities that exceeded civilian contractor requirements, providing additional evidence that supported Martinez's growing certainty about the custodial worker's true background and qualifications, that the moment of truth was approaching, and Martinez prepared to force Elena's hand with a revelation that would end speculation and demand answers. The revelation came with surgical precision when Martinez pulled out her secure tablet and activated a classified database that Elena shouldn't have recognized but clearly did. The device's screen displayed personnel records that carried security classifications far above civilian contractor access levels, information that should have appeared as meaningless bureaucratic data to someone with Elena's supposed background and clearance level. But Elena's reaction was immediate and unmistakable. Her eyes tracked across the classified interface with recognition that could only come from extensive experience with similar systems. Her facial expression showed controlled tension rather than civilian confusion, and her body language shifted subtly into assessment mode as she processed the implications of Martinez's decision to reveal access to restricted military databases during what had appeared to be routine employment verification. Elena Vasquez isn't your real name, Martinez stated with quiet certainty, her voice carrying the authority of someone who had completed a thorough investigation and was prepared to present evidence that would demolish whatever cover identity her target had constructed. Your employment history contains fabrications that are sophisticated enough to pass standard background checks, but not thorough enough to survive detailed analysis by someone with appropriate security clearance and investigative resources. Elena remained silent, her dark eyes meeting Martinez's gaze with steady attention that acknowledged the confrontation, while revealing nothing about her internal calculations or response strategy. Her posture demonstrated controlled readiness without appearing threatening, the kind of balanced alertness that characterized operators who were prepared for multiple scenarios while maintaining plausible civilian behavior patterns. Martinez consulted her tablet, scrolling through information that had required significant effort to access and verify through classified channels that extended far beyond routine contractor verification procedures. The investigation had revealed discrepancies that painted a picture of someone with capabilities and background that exceeded civilian support staff requirements by several orders of magnitude. Your fingerprints match records in databases that civilian contractor shouldn't appear in, Martinez continued, her tone remaining professional while delivering information that shattered Elena's carefully constructed cover identity. Specifically, they match records associated with personnel who have held security clearances at levels that require congressional notification and presidential authorization. That's not background typically associated with custodial work. Elena's response came after a measured pause that demonstrated tactical thinking rather than emotional reaction. When she spoke, her voice carried subtle changes that suggested abandonment of her previous linguistic camouflage in favor of more natural speech, patterns that revealed education and experience levels that had been carefully concealed during months of custodial contractor performance. I assume you've conducted this investigation through appropriate channels and with proper authorization, Elena replied, her language shifting toward the precise vocabulary that characterized military professionals discussing classified information with appropriate security awareness. If so, then you understand that my current employment represents personal choice rather than professional necessity. And that choice has been made for reasons that remain private. Martinez recognized Elena's response as confirmation of her suspicions while simultaneously establishing boundaries around information that would not be revealed regardless of investigative pressure. Elena was acknowledging her military background, while making clear that specific operational details would remain classified even if her cover identity had been compromised through legitimate security investigation. Captain Elena Santos, United States Navy, retired, Martinez stated, reading from classified personnel records that had required extensive research through multiple security databases. 12 years active duty, specialized in maritime special operations, multiple deployments to classified locations supporting counter-terrorism and direct action missions. Navy Cross, Silver Star, Bronze Star with Combat 5. Purple Heart, medical retirement following combat injuries sustained during Operation Silent Thunder, Kandahar Province. Afghanistan. The revelation of Elena's true identity and service record created a moment of absolute silence that stretched between the two women like a taut wire. Elena's expression remained controlled, but Martinez could see the subtle shift in her posture that indicated someone who had been carrying the weight of concealed identity and was experiencing complex emotions about having that burden suddenly lifted through forced revelation. Your injuries from that final operation included traumatic brain injury, severe hearing loss, and orthopedic damage that ended your operational career, Martinez continued, her voice carrying respect for Elena's service while maintaining the investigative pressure necessary to extract complete information about her presence at the facility. Medical evaluation recommended full disability retirement, but you chose reduced benefits in exchange for maintaining active status until voluntary separation. Elena's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly as Martinez recited details from medical records that contained intimate information about injuries sustained in service to country, wounds that had ended a distinguished career, and forced adaptation to civilian life that represented fundamental loss of identity and purpose. The clinical recitation of her most painful personal history carried emotional weight that Elena absorbed without visible reaction despite the obvious difficulty of hearing her trauma summarized as bureaucratic data. After retirement, your employment history becomes deliberately obscured, Martinez observed, consulting additional screens on her tablet that displayed investigation results. Multiple addresses, various temporary positions, consistent pattern of avoiding long-term commitments or positions that would require detailed background verification. Classic behavior pattern of former special operations personnel who are struggling with civilian transition while maintaining operational security habits that are no longer professionally necessary. Elena's response revealed the first genuine emotion she had displayed during the entire confrontation, her voice carrying undertones of pain that had been carefully concealed during months of custodial contractor performance. Civilian transition isn't a process that comes with instruction manuals or support networks that understand the challenges involved. Sometimes former operators need time and space to figure out who they are when they're no longer defined by military service and operational capabilities. Martinez nodded with understanding that came from her own experience working with special operations personnel who had struggled with transition from military to civilian life, warriors who found that their most valuable skills had no application in peaceful environments and whose sense of identity had been so completely tied to military service that retirement felt like death rather than opportunity. You chose custodial work because it allowed you to remain connected to military community while avoiding the psychological pressure of positions that would require tactical decision-making or leadership responsibilities, Martinez observed, her analysis demonstrating sophisticated understanding of the psychological challenges that former operators faced when attempting to build civilian careers after decades of military service. The work is honest, physically demanding enough to provide outlet for energy and fitness requirements, and keeps me connected to people and environment that feel familiar without requiring me to be responsible for other people's lives or mission success. Elena confirmed, her explanation carrying the weight of someone who had given significant thought to employment choices that balanced psychological needs with practical requirements for supporting herself following military retirement. Martinez's investigation had revealed additional information that explained Elena's presence at Naval Air Station Meridian. Beyond simple employment convenience or geographical preference, the base represented connection to specialized community that understood her background while providing distance from active operational responsibilities that might trigger psychological responses related to her combat injuries and career-ending trauma. Your husband was Lieutenant Commander Marcus Santos, also Navy Special Operations, killed in action during the same operation where you sustained career-ending injuries, Martinez continued, reading from classified casualty reports that contained information about joint operations where married couples had served together in specialized units that required extraordinary security clearance and operational capability. Elena's composure finally cracked, her controlled expression showing grief that months of civilian employment had not successfully processed or resolved. The mention of Marcus's death brought visible pain that she had learned to manage but not eliminate, emotional wounds that remained as debilitating as the physical injuries that had ended her military career and forced adaptation to life without the partner who had shared her operational world and understood the costs of their chosen profession. Marcus and I served together for 6 years, Elena said quietly, her voice carrying love and loss that defined her transition from military to civilian life. He understood the work, the risks, the psychological challenges of special operations in ways that civilians never could. When he died and my career ended simultaneously, I lost my partner, my profession, and my identity all at once. Custodial work allows me to exist without constant reminders of what I've lost while remaining connected to military community that represents the closest thing I have to family. Martinez recognized that Elena's presence at the facility represented healing rather than operational activity. The choice of someone who was struggling with civilian transition while maintaining connection to military community that provided psychological support during one of the most difficult periods of her life. Elena wasn't conducting surveillance or gathering intelligence. She was simply trying to survive psychological trauma while building civilian identity that could provide meaning and purpose following devastating personal and professional losses. The confrontation had revealed truth that was both more and less significant than Martinez had suspected. Elena represented no security threat to the facility, but her presence raised questions about support systems for former special operations personnel who required assistance with civilian transition that extended beyond standard veterans services. The immediate aftermath of Elena's revelation created the work is honest, physically demanding enough to provide outlet for energy and fitness requirements, and keeps me connected to people and environment that feel familiar without requiring me to be responsible for other people's lives or mission success. Elena confirmed, her explanation carrying the weight of someone who had given significant thought to employment choices that balanced psychological needs with practical requirements for supporting herself following military retirement. Martinez's investigation had revealed additional information that explained Elena's presence at Naval Air Station Meridian. Beyond simple employment convenience or geographical preference, the base represented connection to specialized community that understood her background while providing distance from active operational responsibilities that might trigger psychological responses related to her combat injuries and career-ending trauma. Your husband was Lieutenant Commander Marcus Santos, also Navy Special Operations, killed in action during the same operation where you sustained career-ending injuries, Martinez continued, reading from classified casualty reports that contained information about joint operations where married couples had served together in specialized units that required extraordinary security clearance and operational capability. Elena's composure finally cracked, her controlled expression showing grief that months of civilian employment had not successfully processed or resolved. The mention of Marcus's death brought visible pain that she had learned to manage but not eliminate, emotional wounds that remained as debilitating as the physical injuries that had ended her military career and forced adaptation to life without the partner who had shared her operational world and understood the costs of their chosen profession. Marcus and I served together for 6 years, Elena said quietly, her voice carrying love and loss that defined her transition from military to civilian life. He understood the work, the risks, the psychological challenges of special operations in ways that civilians never could. When he died and my career ended simultaneously, I lost my partner, my profession, and my identity all at once. Custodial work allows me to exist without constant reminders of what I've lost while remaining connected to military community that represents the closest thing I have to family. Martinez recognized that Elena's presence at the facility represented healing rather than operational activity. The choice of someone who was struggling with civilian transition while maintaining connection to military community that provided psychological support during one of the most difficult periods of her life. Elena wasn't conducting surveillance or gathering intelligence. She was simply trying to survive psychological trauma while building civilian identity that could provide meaning and purpose following devastating personal and professional losses. The confrontation had revealed truth that was both more and less significant than Martinez had suspected. Elena represented no security threat to the facility, but her presence raised questions about support systems for former special operations personnel who required assistance with civilian transition that extended beyond standard veterans services. The immediate aftermath of Elena's revelation created a complex emotional landscape that neither woman had fully anticipated. When Martinez began her investigation, the sterile environment of Building 47's exit area suddenly felt inadequate for containing the weight of shared understanding between two military professionals who recognized each other's service, sacrifice, and the particular challenges that define special operations careers and their inevitable conclusions. Martinez found herself reassessing not only Elena's presence at the facility, but her own responsibilities as senior enlisted leadership when confronted with a former operator who was clearly struggling with transition issues that extended far beyond standard veteran services or conventional support systems. Elena's choice to seek employment as custodial staff represented a coping strategy that deserved respect rather than suspicion, even if it had triggered legitimate security concerns that required investigation and resolution. Captain Santos, Martinez began, deliberately using Elena's correct rank and name as acknowledgement of her service and recognition of the respect she had earned through 12 years of distinguished military career. I owe you an apology for the investigative approach, but I hope you understand that your presence here triggered security protocols that required resolution through appropriate channels. Elena nodded slowly, her composure gradually returning as she processed the shift from confrontation to professional recognition between military colleagues who shared understanding of operational security requirements, and the challenges they created for personnel transitioning between different phases of military careers. Her response demonstrated the measured professionalism that characterized special operations personnel even during emotionally difficult conversations. "You did exactly what your position requires, Master Chief," Elena replied, her voice carrying acknowledgement of Martinez's professional obligations, while revealing appreciation for the respectful manner in which the investigation had been conducted. Once her true identity became known, security awareness and thorough investigation are essential responsibilities in your position. I understand why my behavior patterns would trigger concern and require resolution through official channels. Martinez consulted her tablet, reviewing Elena's complete service record with the analytical attention of someone who understood how to interpret military documentation and assess the significance of awards, assignments, and medical information. That painted a comprehensive picture of extraordinary service followed by devastating personal and professional losses that would challenge anyone's ability to adapt successfully to civilian life. "Your service record is remarkable," Martinez observed, her voice carrying genuine respect for achievements that represented the highest levels of military excellence and personal sacrifice. Navy Cross for actions during Operation Desert Storm, Silver Star for counter-terrorism operations in Somalia, Bronze Star with Combat V for direct action missions in Afghanistan. These are custodial work, provides physical activity, maintains connection to military community, and allows you to contribute to mission success without requiring the kind of tactical leadership or operational decision-making that might trigger psychological responses related to your combat injuries, Martinez summarized, her analysis demonstrating sophisticated understanding of the therapeutic considerations that had guided Elena's employment choices. Elena confirmed Martinez's assessment while revealing additional layers of complexity that explained her specific choice to seek employment at Naval Air Station Meridian rather than pursuing civilian career opportunities that might have provided better financial compensation or advancement potential, but would have required complete disconnection from military community and culture. "The work keeps me physically active, mentally occupied, and emotionally connected to people and environment that feel familiar, without creating pressure to demonstrate capabilities that I can no longer maintain at operational levels," Elena explained, her description revealing careful thought about employment that would support psychological healing, while respecting the limitations that combat injuries had created for her future career options. The conversation was interrupted by the arrival of Master Instructor Blackwood, who emerged from Building 47 carrying classified training materials, and immediately noticed the intense discussion between Martinez and Elena near the facility's main exit. Blackwood's presence complicated the dynamic of their conversation by introducing someone whose security awareness and command authority required explanation of why senior enlisted leadership was conducting extended private discussions with civilian contractor personnel after normal duty hours. "Master Chief, is everything proceeding normally with the security verification?" Blackwood inquired, his tone professionally neutral while his eyes assessed the situation for potential complications that might require command attention or additional security measures beyond routine contractor background investigation procedures. Martinez faced a critical decision about how much information to reveal regarding Elena's true identity and the investigation that had exposed her military background. Elena's service record contained classified information that required careful handling, but her presence at the facility no longer represented security concern that would justify continued investigation or restrictions on her employment status. "Sir, the verification process has been completed successfully," Martinez replied, her response technically accurate while providing Blackwood with assurance that security protocols had been followed without requiring detailed explanation of Elena's background or the complex personal circumstances that had brought a decorated special operations veteran to seek employment as custodial contractor. Blackwood accepted Martinez's assessment with the professional trust that characterized effective military leadership relationships, but his experienced eye continued evaluating Elena with attention that suggested recognition of details that didn't quite fit standard civilian contractor profiles. Elena's bearing, her response to command presence, and her overall demeanor demonstrated characteristics that distinguished her from typical support personnel. Elena maintained appropriate respectful posture during this exchange, but Martinez noticed that her positioning and attention patterns continued reflecting tactical awareness that had become automatic through years of special operations training that created permanent changes in how former operators processed environmental threats and interpersonal dynamics regardless of their current civilian status. The resolution of Elena's identity crisis would require decisions about her continued employment, her integration into facility community with appropriate recognition of her background, and support systems that could help her navigate civilian transition while honoring her service and respecting her personal choices about how to build meaningful life following military career that had defined her identity for more than a decade. The transformation in facility dynamics began the following morning when Master Chief Martinez made a decision that would fundamentally alter how Naval Air Station Meridian approached veteran integration and support systems for former special operations personnel transitioning to civilian employment. Rather than simply filing her investigation report and allowing Elena to continue working under her assumed identity, Martinez chose to advocate for recognition that honored Elena's service while respecting her personal choices about employment and community involvement. Commander Patricia Hawkins received Martinez's briefing at 0730 hours in her secure office, where classified personnel matters could be discussed with appropriate security protocols and confidentiality measures. Hawkins had commanded the facility for 18 months, building a reputation for innovative leadership approaches that balanced mission requirements with personnel welfare in ways that exceeded standard military management practices and demonstrated genuine understanding of the complex challenges facing modern special operations communities. Master Chief, your investigation has revealed a situation that requires careful consideration beyond standard security protocols, Commander Hawkins observed after reviewing Martinez's comprehensive report on Elena's background and current employment status. Captain Santos represents both an asset and a responsibility that we need to address through policies that acknowledge her service while supporting her civilian transition needs. Martinez had prepared recommendations that balanced Elena's privacy requirements with facility security considerations and community integration opportunities that could benefit both Elena's psychological healing and the base's educational mission. Her proposal represented innovative thinking about how military installations could support veteran transition while maintaining operational security and professional standards that satisfied regulatory oversight requirements. Ma'am, I recommend that we officially recognize Captain Santos's military background while allowing her to continue custodial employment if that remains her preference. Martinez proposed, consulting detailed implementation plans she had developed following her investigation. We could create a hybrid position that acknowledges her expertise while respecting her choice to avoid high-pressure tactical responsibilities that might conflict with her recovery process. Commander Hawkins understood the broader implications of Martinez's recommendation, recognizing that Elena's situation represented an opportunity to demonstrate innovative veteran support that could serve as a model for other military installations facing similar challenges with former special operations personnel who required transition assistance that extended beyond conventional veteran services or disability support programs. The facility's response to Elena's revealed identity created unexpected ripple effects throughout the command structure as personnel who had interacted with her during her months of custodial employment, began reassessing their assumptions about capability, service, and the diverse ways that military experience manifested in civilian work environments. The revelation challenged preconceptions about hierarchy, respect, and recognition that had implications far beyond Elena's individual situation. Master Instructor Blackwood experienced the most significant shift in perspective as he processed the information that the custodial worker he had barely acknowledged for months was actually a decorated special operations veteran whose combat experience exceeded his own operational background. His initial reaction combined professional embarrassment with genuine admiration for Elena's service and her choice to maintain dignity through honest work, despite possessing qualifications that would have justified far different employment arrangements. "I need to speak with Captain Santos personally," Blackwood informed Martinez during their private discussion about facility response to Elena's revealed identity. Not as her supervisor or in any official capacity, but as a fellow military professional who owes her recognition and respect that should have been extended regardless of her apparent employment status. Elena's reaction to the facility's changed awareness of her background proved complex, combining relief at no longer maintaining her cover identity with anxiety about increased attention that might interfere with the psychological healing process that had guided her employment choices. She had spent months building routines and relationships based on her custodial contractor persona, and the transition to acknowledged veteran status required careful navigation to preserve therapeutic benefits while accepting appropriate recognition. Chief Kane approached Elena during her morning cleaning routine, his demeanor showing professional respect that contrasted sharply with his previous casual dismissal of support personnel. Kane's military experience included deployments where he had worked alongside special operations teams, providing him with understanding of the capabilities and sacrifices that Elena's service record represented for American military effectiveness and national security objectives. "Captain Santos, I want to apologize for any disrespect I may have shown during your employment here," Kane said, his voice carrying genuine contrition along with military courtesy appropriate for addressing a senior officer regardless of current civilian status. "Your service record represents exactly the kind of excellence and sacrifice that makes our mission possible. It's an honor to work at the same facility where you've chosen to continue contributing to military readiness." Elena's response demonstrated the grace and professionalism that had characterized her military career, accepting Kane's apology while deflecting excessive praise in favor of focus on current mission requirements and community objectives that transcended individual recognition or historical achievements. Her approach revealed leadership principles that remained active despite her transition to civilian employment and support role. "Chief Kane, everyone here works hard to maintain standards and prepare the next generation of operators," Elena replied. Her acknowledgement of Kane's apology balanced with redirection toward shared mission focus rather than personal recognition. "My custodial work contributes to that mission in small ways, just like everyone else's specialized contributions combine to create effective training environment." The facility's instructional staff began requesting opportunities to consult with Elena about training methodologies and candidate development approaches that could benefit from her operational experience and leadership perspective. These requests required careful consideration of Elena's psychological readiness for tactical consultation while respecting her choice to avoid high-pressure responsibilities that might trigger responses related to her combat injuries and career transition challenges. Senior Chief Santos approached Elena with particular interest in her assessment of weapons training protocols and candidate performance evaluation criteria that could incorporate insights from her extensive special operations background. Santos recognized that Elena's operational experience provided perspective on training effectiveness that could enhance facility mission success while supporting her gradual reintegration into military community engagement. Captain, would you be willing to observe some of our training scenarios and provide feedback about effectiveness from an operator's perspective? Santos asked, his request carefully structured to offer professional engagement without creating pressure for formal instructional responsibilities that might exceed Elena's current comfort level with tactical consultation. Elena's consideration of Santos's request reflected her ongoing internal negotiation between desire to contribute meaningfully to military mission success and need to maintain psychological boundaries that protected her recovery process from pressures that could interfere with civilian transition progress. Her response would establish precedent for future community engagement that balanced service contribution with personal welfare. I'd be honored to observe training and share perspective when it might be helpful, Elena replied, her acceptance demonstrating willingness to contribute expertise while maintaining control over involvement levels that respected her psychological needs and recovery timeline. The facility's administrative personnel began developing formal recognition procedures that would acknowledge Elena's service through appropriate ceremonies and documentation, while respecting her preference for continued custodial employment and minimal disruption to routines that supported her psychological stability during civilian transition process. Lieutenant Commander Morrison coordinated with base leadership to arrange recognition that honored Elena's military achievements without creating publicity or attention that might interfere with her civilian employment preferences or personal privacy requirements. The approach balanced institutional obligations to recognize distinguished service with individual needs for psychological healing and community reintegration. The transformation of facility culture extended beyond Elena's individual situation. As personnel began examining their own assumptions about service, capability, and respect for all community members, regardless of apparent status or job classifications. Elena's revelation had demonstrated that extraordinary capability could manifest in unexpected ways, challenging everyone to reconsider how they evaluated and interacted with colleagues across all levels of military hierarchy. As Elena continued her custodial duties with renewed sense of community acceptance and appropriate recognition, the facility developed into a model for veteran integration that balanced individual needs with institutional mission requirements while demonstrating innovative approaches to supporting former special operations personnel during their civilian transition challenges. The epilogue to Elena Santos's revelation unfolded over the following 6 months as Naval Air Station Meridian became an unexpected laboratory for innovative veteran integration programs that balanced individual healing needs with institutional mission requirements. Elena's situation had exposed significant gaps in support systems for former special operations personnel who required transition assistance that extended beyond conventional veteran services, creating opportunities for policy development that could benefit similar cases throughout the military community. Commander Hawkins received notification from Naval Special Warfare Command that Elena's case had generated interest at the highest levels of military leadership, with requests for detailed reports about integration strategies and their effectiveness in supporting veteran transition while maintaining operational security and facility mission integrity. The attention represented both recognition of innovative leadership and pressure to demonstrate measurable results that could justify expanded implementation across other installations. Elena's hybrid employment arrangement evolved into a unique position that combined custodial responsibilities with limited tactical consultation, allowing her to contribute operational expertise while maintaining psychological boundaries that protected her recovery process. The arrangement required careful documentation and regular evaluation to ensure that increased responsibilities enhanced rather than compromised her civilian transition progress and mental health stability. Her first formal consultation involved reviewing candidate performance during advanced combat scenarios, where her operational experience provided insights that complemented instructor perspectives and enhanced training effectiveness. Elena's approach to tactical analysis demonstrated the same methodical precision that had characterized her military service, but adapted to educational rather than operational objectives that reduce stress while maintaining professional engagement. The candidates are technically proficient, but lack the kind of situational awareness that develops through extensive experience with real-world uncertainty. Elena observed during her initial training assessment for Master Instructor Blackwood and his team. Combat rarely follows training scenarios exactly, so building adaptability requires exposure to more unpredictable variables than current exercises provide. Blackwood's implementation of Elena's recommendations resulted in improved training. Scenarios that better prepared candidates for operational environments while respecting her preference to avoid direct instructional responsibilities that might trigger psychological responses related to her combat injuries and career transition. Challenges. The collaboration demonstrated effective integration of veteran expertise without compromising individual welfare requirements. Elena's relationship with facility personnel underwent gradual transformation as colleagues learned to balance recognition of her military achievements with respect for her current employment choices and psychological needs. The adjustment required ongoing communication and sensitivity training that helped everyone navigate interactions with someone whose background exceeded their own experience, while whose current situation reflected personal circumstances that deserved privacy and support. Master Chief Martinez assumed informal mentorship responsibilities for Elena's facility integration, helping her navigate institutional politics and community expectations, while protecting her from pressure to assume roles or responsibilities that exceeded her comfort level. Martinez's support provided crucial buffer between Elena's individual needs and institutional requirements that could have conflicted without careful management and advocacy. Captain Santos has taught this facility valuable lessons about service, capability, and the diverse ways that military experience can contribute to mission success. Martinez reported during quarterly assessment meetings with base leadership. Her presence has challenged our assumptions about hierarchy and recognition while demonstrating innovative approaches to veteran support that benefit both individuals and institutional effectiveness. Elena's weekly consultation sessions with training staff evolved into collaborative relationships that enhanced facility mission success while providing her with meaningful professional engagement that supported psychological healing without overwhelming her capacity for civilian transition. The balance required constant adjustment based on her recovery progress and changing comfort levels with tactical consultation responsibilities. The facility's recognition ceremony for Elena took place on Veterans Day, acknowledging her service through appropriate military honors, while respecting her request for minimal publicity and focus on institutional mission rather than individual achievements. The ceremony balanced acknowledgement of extraordinary service with Elena's preference for community integration rather than celebrity status that might interfere with her ongoing recovery process. Elena's acceptance speech reflected the leadership principles that had defined her military career, deflecting personal praise while emphasizing shared mission focus and community support that had enabled her civilian transition. Her remarks demonstrated continued commitment to service excellence while acknowledging personal challenges that required ongoing attention and support from military community. Service takes many forms, and every contribution matters regardless of apparent status or job classification. Elena told the assembled facility personnel during the recognition ceremony, "My custodial work contributes to mission success, just like everyone else's specialized efforts combine to create effective training environment. The honor belongs to all of us who choose to serve in whatever capacity our circumstances allow." Commander Hawkins announced the establishment of the Santos Veterans Integration Program, a comprehensive support system designed to assist former special operations personnel with civilian transition challenges while maintaining connection to military community and opportunities. For continued service contribution, the program would serve as pilot project for potential expansion to other installations facing similar challenges with veteran transition support. Elena's influence on facility culture extended beyond formal programs as personnel began demonstrating increased awareness of capability diversity and respect for all community members, regardless of their apparent position in organizational hierarchy. The cultural shift represented lasting change that would benefit future personnel assignments and community relationships for years to come. 6 months after her identity revelation, Elena remained in her hybrid position, continuing custodial responsibilities while providing limited tactical consultation that supported facility mission success without compromising her psychological recovery process. The arrangement had proven sustainable and beneficial for both individual welfare and institutional effectiveness. Validating innovative approaches to veteran integration, Elena's personal healing progressed steadily as she rebuilt professional identity that balanced her special operations background with civilian employment choices that provided psychological stability and community connection. Her relationship with military culture evolved from painful reminder of losses to source of continued purpose and meaningful contribution despite changed circumstances. The facility's candidate success rates improved following implementation of Elena's training recommendations, demonstrating measurable benefits from veteran integration that justified continued program development and expansion. Elena's operational expertise enhanced training effectiveness, while her civilian transition provided model for supporting other veterans facing similar challenges. As evening descended over Naval Air Station Meridian, Elena completed her custodial routine with the same methodical precision that had characterized her approach to military service, but now informed by renewed sense of purpose and community acceptance that supported continued healing and professional contribution. Her story had become inspiration for innovative veteran support that balanced individual needs with institutional mission requirements. Elena's transformation from anonymous custodial worker to recognized veteran consultant represented successful navigation of civilian transition challenges while maintaining connection to military community that provided psychological support and meaningful purpose. Her journey demonstrated that service could take many forms, that healing required time and understanding, and that military communities had responsibility to support veterans through all phases of their transitions. The lessons learned from Elena's integration would inform policy development and support programs for years to come, ensuring that other veterans facing similar challenges would receive assistance that honored their service while respecting their individual circumstances and recovery needs. Elena Santos had served her country with distinction during military career and continued serving through her example of resilience, dignity, and commitment to community contribution despite personal challenges that would have defeated lesser people. Her story concluded not with dramatic resolution, but with quiet satisfaction of meaningful work, supportive community, and renewed purpose that transformed painful transition into foundation for continued service in new forms. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.